Well, we finally got our first real good look at The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, specifically when it comes to what is going to separate this game from Breath of the Wild. And the expectations were pretty high. And while the presentation itself was about 10 minutes of actual gameplay, there is a lot of possibilities coming out of this show, and I wanted to go over my initial thoughts and reaction on what we saw here today. So if you guys enjoy the video, make sure you like it and subscribe if you're new to the Spawn Wave channel. Let's take a look here. This is the entire video, and I just kind of wanted to jump through it a bit and stop at different points as we go. He is using the Joy-Con grip controller. I assume that's mostly just for marketing, right? To show the default configuration that I know there's Pro Controller, but most people who have a Switch have this configuration, right? That's at least available to them, not necessarily a Pro Controller. So I think that's lots of people mentioning that. I think that's really why they decided to go that route there. We do have Mr. Aonuma going over the game itself here. And when they showed this initial shot, yes, it did looks like Breath of the Wild, right? But obviously Link's character model is different, hair is longer, different outfit, all this. But the thing that I noticed, and it's a consistent thing all the way through, is that the frame rate seems smoother than what we had with Breath of the Wild, which when it first came out, there was actually quite a bit of stuttering and some issues with even like the Switch version versus even like the Wii U version. Although the Wii U ran at a lower resolution, it was still something that had to get some patchwork done to get it smoother. Now, they specifically show a certain section of this game, so keep that in mind. They are showing us this specific region probably for a few reasons. Story, right? They don't want to show anything that's going to spoil significant parts of the game, and to show the game in its best possible light. All right, so keep all of that in mind. Now, the biggest thing here they really wanted to hammer home with this presentation was that verticality, as we can see the sky islands that they describe here. And in order to get up to this one, they use an ability that does indeed rewind time, where this platform came down. Using this ability, it then pushes that back up because it's rewinding time for it. Now, they also mentioned there are other ways to get to the Sky Islands, and I assume that's something that will be maybe unlocked as we go through the game, because Recall, as they show here, was at least displayed and demonstrated in a previous trailer. So it makes sense why they decided to show that here, because it's not necessarily spoiling maybe a mechanic or some sort of ability that you get later on, maybe just to jettison Link completely up into the air. Also, look at that. We can see one of the dragon kind of flying around there. So it does appear that we will have like the larger beasts that you get to in this game. And I do want to point out, the thing that really surprised me a bit is the draw distance. I mean, this is it. They show another impressive part of that later on, but even just kind of looking out here, while it is harder to see, and that's on purpose, clearly, because you're not going to render everything down there, but you do at least get the ability to spot different things that are far off in the distance. And it does look like you're going to have plenty of stuff in the sky to explore. And I'm curious how different at least the ground level is compared to Breath of the Wild. As he said, an unknown Hyrule. Now, I do want to jump ahead a little bit here. They do show Link beating up an enemy with a stick. Yes, weapon degradation is in this game, and that was a controversial aspect to the first one. And it's something I didn't like as much, only because I felt compelled to just basically stow anything cool that I got, and I didn't really want to use it necessarily because I didn't want to break it. Although weapons and all that, it was pretty abundant. Like, you'd find it consistently. However, they did introduce something here that will probably have me using even the cool weapons, or weapons I find that I like, much more often, because it seems like you're going to be able to craft different items, which we can see here. Put a boulder with a stick, and you end up getting a hammer, just like that. It also looks like it does raise the attack. I just saw a +2, and they go on to demonstrate its ability to take down an enemy in less swings. This is called the Fuse ability. This is the thing that is going to, I think, separate this game from Breath of the Wild. In Breath of the Wild, people were kind of doing stuff sort of like this, where they realized they could put things stacked or use abilities and combine them to launch Link across the map or do different things with boats and others. So it's pretty obvious that the Zelda team took notice of this and thought, how can we take that to the next level? And it appears that the crafting or fusing system is on the fly. You walk up to something like this, you pick it up, and then you choose through a press of a button what you then want to fuse it to. So in this case, a larger stick with a pitchfork, and you have a very large pitchfork, which means you can attack from range. So it appears there's going to be a lot of strategy involved here. And the thing that I was looking at it and said, all right, that's great for the weapon side of things. You then get into your bow, which can house a leaf. You can merge ice with it. That's fine. It's not, ice arrows aren't new, right? But then you get to the idea of taking an eyeball, putting it on an arrow, and then it will track enemies. In this case, they shoot down a bird. That then gets me thinking about some of the other items that were just shown in that inventory that would work to merge with your shield, which they also show, the different arrows, your maybe swords that you get, a lot of possibilities here. And that, I think, is the big word of the day now for people who watch this trailer, are possibilities. However, this is the aspect of the entire fuse system that I think is really going to create longevity with this game. And in a way, it is essentially an editor that's just in-game. As you take different objects and you merge them together or stick them together, you can create things like a raft. But to go a bit further than that, you'll also have the ability to take like little fans or turbines and attach them to the raft. You see you have kind of the ability to do rotational effects. You can, which we'll see here in a second, activate and almost have you have this power meter here. So that in a way will work to push the little boat here across the water. And we've seen other vehicles that were built, like the car that Link was driving around, a hot air balloon. We also had almost like a hovercraft that had a sail on it that started to take off out of the water. Didn't really look like it was going to get very far because the battery meter was falling pretty quickly. However, that does make me think that maybe there will be upgrades for these different items. And in a sense, that could also be how they're able to somewhat control what you can do in the game, because this seems incredibly open-ended from a gameplay and design standpoint. The fact that you can just piece this stuff together and, I mean, maybe even break parts of the game, that is an incredibly challenging aspect for a developer. Now, they also have this ascend ability, which we saw pretty much right away in the first real trailer for the game, where Link is passing through solid objects. They sort of showcase it here almost as a shortcut, but I kind of think there's going to be a lot more involved here in terms of puzzle solving, which that is something that I want to talk about a little later when it comes to the structure of this game. But for example, here, instead of climbing the side of the mountain, you can just ascend through the ceiling and come right out through the top. They also have a fun little animation that I do like. Kind of shows Link swimming through the solid object with the green glow around him. And you could kind of see that as maybe a loading time or a loading screen, sort of an animation to mask it. But I do like the idea of, in the previous one, you would climb up the side. We realized that some people maybe didn't like that after the 10th time of doing it. Here's a fun way to just kind of ascend beyond that. And then you can probably get to parts of the map you wouldn't have been able to otherwise, as you can see just jettisons completely through that very large mountain. Now, he said there's some restrictions, and yeah, there are probably going to be parts in certain story castles or where you can't just go through the ceiling because they didn't design any kind of floor above that. Now, this is a fun part, and it's something I've noticed where we are in gaming now. There's very little fear in falling in games anymore. Have you noticed that? Before, if we got launched off of something this high up, we just immediately assume it's a game over screen. But here's Link getting thrust off of this sky island. And right here, you picture that, where the camera kind of pans down and then you're falling and it just says game over on the screen. No, instead, they flip it, and he's just diving out of Fortnite or Call of Duty Warzone or something like that. But I do like that we are very fearless now when it comes to falling in games, and it's actually become a pretty fun aspect to some of these titles. So now we could fall through. This is where the draw distance that I said was pretty impressive. This is where it kind of goes to the next level. Going from a sky level like that, like to the floor level, streamlined, that is a very impressive aspect considering how vast it looks like this world is attempting to be. I don't think it's going to be on the scale of Xenoblade Chronicles, like what we saw with 3, but I do feel like the traversal, like as this is right here with that sky level, and the potential for maybe like an underground level, so maybe 3 levels, is impressive on its own. And then you obviously work into the idea of gliding, climbing, ascending, and rewinding time. I'm kind of starting to understand why it's taking them this long in order to develop the game. Now, something that's been brought up. This game doesn't necessarily look like the big graphical leap that you would like to see from a sequel. But to me, this has been gone over so many times, and it's not even just with Nintendo. It was talked about with God of War Ragnarok, Horizon Forbidden West. It feels like DLC. But with something like those titles and this game, Tears of the Kingdom, I don't know how you would be able to make Tears of the Kingdom DLC when you have the fuse system that is very difficult to craft an entire world around, because it looks like there are a lot of things that could just outright break with the original Breath of the Wild if you insert something like that. So I do understand, looking at what's showcased here, even though it was a small sample size, that they would have a very difficult time doing that, and they probably have to do this clean break to develop a new title. Now, is it $70 worth? Well, from what I saw with Breath of the Wild, it's going to be subjective, yes, but there was a lot of content there, and I'm seeing a lot of possibilities here. The other thing that I'm very curious about is the structure of this game. Are we doing dungeons? Are we doing shrines? Are we doing a mixture of both, where maybe there's not as many shrines as Breath of the Wild? There are maybe larger shrines, right? But not maybe as few shrines as we would have normally with dungeons in traditional Zelda. So maybe it's kind of a mixture of both. But some have pointed out that when Link was falling from the sky, you didn't really see any shrines necessarily, just kind of hanging out on the ground level. So that's sort of where I am now, because designing puzzles and dungeons around how open the mechanics here that they're demonstrating, that's going to be very difficult, and I just don't see any way it can be as streamlined as we've seen with traditional dungeons back in the day for Zelda. So I think this will be a new experience in that regard, and I'm very curious about this one. But I'm also interested to see what everyone else thought about the trailer that they showed off here with the gameplay and all of this. Again, 10 minutes. I would have liked to have seen a bit more, as he did allude to many other abilities that they just don't have any time to show here. You could have made time. This could have been 20 minutes, and you show off even more. They say that there are just mysteries and things they want to leave up to the players to discover, and I think that's fun, but I also feel like you could showcase some of the other abilities without giving away all the trade secrets of the game. But hey, still, 6 or 7 weeks before the game comes out, so I guess there's still time to drop little trailers and gameplay showcases on Twitter and YouTube. But let me know what you guys thought about this one down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.